I always like to tell the story of one Patrick Minford, who you may remember was meant to be the big Brexit economist. If you had a question about how Brexit was going to benefit the economy, well, you go to Patrick Minford. Daniel Hanan's the brain of Brexit. If you've got a Brexit question, Dan's the man with the answer. But if you've got one about the economy, well, oh boy, you go over and talk to Patrick. You find out about how wonderful the Brexit economy is going to be. And almost immediately, Minford gave the game away. He said the British farming industry is going to be absolutely destroyed. Our manufacturing sector is going to basically be reduced to zero as it will move to other countries. He was saying that Britain would have to massively deregulate its industries. All these rules and laws and regulations would have to go. And the thing is, as we've always said, if you go out and you talk to people on the streets, you talk about regulation, everyone in the UK is in favour of regulation. It's only just like the people who originally wanted Brexit are in this tiny minority, but who follow this crazy free market libertarian mantra that they insist works, but anywhere in the world where it has been tried, no matter what scale, be it big or small, it has failed. If you want a clear example, just go look up a certain llama called Hurricane and the fact that one town in America, well, basically had to beware of bears because that's what happened when libertarians took over a small town in America. Fascinating story, but that may be for another time. But today we're going to go look at Conservative Home because, as we've always said, Conservative Home is a fascinating place where these Conservatives feel as if they are free to write to a Conservative audience without criticism or worry that they're going to get quoted out of nowhere. Conservative Home is massive in the sort of conservative media infosphere online, but you don't tend to see too many people looking at what they're saying. And this is why we cover it, because you've got to know what these people are saying, because, oh boy, have they got some crazy plans. Some very crazy plans indeed. More importantly, is what we're about to talk about today. We want big deregulation because that's how we get growth. Well, like I say, if you poll the British public many times when you talk about regulations and deregulations, they are in favour of regulations, not deregulations at all. Plus, people like these Brexiteers say the word deregulations and then they don't actually tell you what it is they want to do, like what it is they want to deregulate. Or they will be very vague when pressed. And that is what we are going to see today, because it is worth reminding people that this was the grand economic idea behind Brexit. And these people are still trying to push this idea. So strap yourselves in, because I think this one might be a long one today as well. So, but before we do begin on our journey, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, please do remember where your emergency exits are located as well. Also, down below, you will find in your pocket seats the links to my Patreon page, the Buy Me a Coffee link where you can, buy me coffee, and of course, the Pony Club as well, should you like to sort of see those. And there's also the YouTube thank you button as well. So, like I say, your pilot welcomes you to today's wonderful flying session where we will fly through the libertarian skies and find out what this free market fundamentalist mindset brings to people and what they really, a true agenda of Brexit really was, which was to achieve this Singapore on the Thames, this low tax, low regulation country, which in reality, when people are polled on this, no one wants. But that was the grand idea behind Brexit. So let's go cracking on into this. Like I said, this comes from Conservative Home with the title of with the guy written it called John Longworth, the title of Trade Deals Abroad and Better Prospects Here: What Ministers Ought to Do with Britain Itself to Help Boost Growth. And of course, John Longworth is a businessman and entrepreneur, and he's chairman of the Foundation for Independence and the Independent Business Network. And of course, he's a former MEP of the Brexit Party and the Conservatives. Wow, what a flip-flopper we've got here. I wonder if he'll flip over to the the Reform Party. It wouldn't surprise me, because that seems to be the pattern that these guys have all followed. They were part of the Brexit Party, now they're part of the Conservatives, and now we're seeing them say they are we're in the Conservative Party, now they're flipping back to Reform, which was essentially the Brexit Party. Again, loyalty in this party is at a premium. So here we go. Except perhaps at the BBC, we're all cheered by the news of the completion of the Trans-Pacific Trade Pact, a multidimensional step towards the forming of a global Britain, given both its economic and diplomatic potential. Well, its economic potential is 0.08%, and as we discussed yesterday, that number has been vastly inflated to what we believe. Apparently, it is more close to 0.03%, apparently. So, wow, what an economic benefit. And of course, the diplomatic potential. Well, the diplomatic potential is we keep China out, we stop them from joining. But here's the thing, the Pacific Partnership basically works in a vastly different way, because as Japan especially wanted the UK to join, and Canada was trying to sort of block the UK from joining, because it has said we are not going to accept we are not going to lower our standards on meat and dairy. Now, of course, as we've been told by Japan numerous times, that nothing in signing of this pact had been changed. Now, again, I'd like to remind people, we still haven't actually seen the details of this deal, even though I know people tell me, oh, but there's this one in the New Zealand sort of repository. I don't care what's in New Zealand's repository. What I care about is what on earth has Kimi Badenoch actually signed up. Bear in mind, we haven't seen that paper agreement yet. That is nowhere to be seen at the moment. It is somewhere locked away in Whitehall. That's what I care about. And until we see that, yes, there is that New Zealand one, but until we actually see what the UK has signed up to, put it this way, if you want to go and have a look at the New Zealand one, I'm sure that is potentially what we might have signed as well. But until we actually see someone from the British government signature on something like that, I worry what we have signed up to. So, but anyway, let's go back to it. So it is right and proper to celebrate, since that our new and quote special partners bordering the Pacific represent some of the fastest growing economies on Earth, old friends who are our kith and kin and leading Commonwealth nations. Again, this leans back to the whole empire wonderful thing. Oh, yes, we were in the Pacific. Wasn't this all fantastic? Oh, my God, look at all this growth that's going to go on in the Pacific. Yes, key item there, in the Pacific. You know, that's not how trade works. Otherwise, what about all these other poor countries that trade with America or, Europe, which have far bigger growth than sort of those poorer countries? They don't seem to be prospering all that too much, because again, it's not how trade works. But there you go. Though the wonder of compounding growth is growing, including the UK will very quickly come to outstrip the EU. What? Yeah, but what about the UK itself? It doesn't matter if the Pacific Partnership grows, because we're not in the Pacific. We're not going to gain any advantages from this. This is what people like this guy and these Brexiteers just do not simply understand. But there you go. And if the current trajectory continues, they will collectively have an economy and an economic zone twice the size of the EU by 2050. Well, of course, the Pacific is massive compared to Europe. And when you compare economic zones, of course, when you're comparing not like GDP size, but the size of Europe compared to the Pacific, it's massive. So the idea you would just say that is completely ludicrous and say that is some sort of benefit. But as we've said before, who else is going to join this economic zone? Because we've been told South Korea might join. We've told other countries might join. Not they will join, they might join. And bear in mind, we were the first country to join the Pacific Partnership in about, what? Is it 11? No. Yeah. Is it 11 years? Almost. So, wow. How wonderful this must be if no other of these other countries are rushing to join the Pacific Partnership. So, notwithstanding all this, it is equally important to maintain a laser-like focus on the other areas of policy that will generate growth, which could provide at least as much benefit as trade deals. Again, they are completely misunderstanding sort of why countries do trade deals and what we are. Tariffs around the world and what trade deals are meant to do is, again, to lower these tariffs to achieve sort of mutual, maybe recognition, to maybe, there's all kinds of reasons countries do trade deals, but it's not very much helpful at this moment in time, especially around the world, where tariffs are at a record low around the world. So doing trade deals to lower tariffs are already very low, so doesn't tend to get too much of an audience, unfortunately. But hey, they're already gun ho about it, so why if they're crowing this much about the Pacific Partnership, imagine what they would be actually crying about if there was an actual Brexit benefit. As we've already said before, if there were benefits of Brexit, we would be seeing articles like this all the time about that specific Brexit benefit. Trust me, we would. So growth is absolutely essential in order to create wealth. Not really. Again, like I say, these free market fundamentalists are obsessed with growth. You have to grow. You must grow, 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 grow. Guess what? There are companies that make a lot of money, but they don't tend to grow that too much because they're profitable and they're a successful business. Why this obsession that you just have to grow? But that's part of this whole libertarian credo that they're obsessed with. So innovation and economic disruption create growth and are an essential ingredient of it. And again, I'd love it. Economic disruption. Yeah, Liz Truss really created economic disruption, and look how wonderful that went for us, almost crashing the pensions industry of the UK. Yeah, wonderful idea, guys. So they are an essential ingredient of it, and in turn, growth provides new technology and helps society develop. Again, part of their whole credo, not really proven. The relative economic performance of countries is very important, and if ours consistently falls behind others, we cannot guarantee our security or prosperity. Well, why then did we leave? If that is so important, if economic performance is really that important, why then did we leave the EU? Why then did we Brexit? That doesn't make, again, that doesn't stand by your case for campaigning for Brexit if that's the case. So trade, for all its parts, does not only provide market opportunities for exports, but also the possibility of cheaper, better imports as finished goods or components, which lowers the cost of living. No, it really doesn't. Yes, you get cheaper imports, but what is sort of the other side of that? Um, all of a sudden your own home market then cannot compete um, with these flood of cheaper finished good products. They don't understand this part of this trade at all. This is why, and this is why any other country around the world trade deals and like joining things like the Pacific Partnership or other things, trade deals like this are massive components of politics, massive components of politics, and we have not seen that. But other countries, this talk about doing trade deals and things like this happens all the time. We just have not seen it because we have been very much in the EU and have been, well, very happy to let the EU decide to do all that job for us. And as a result, it hasn't really become a fixture in Parliament, except for the massive Eurosceptic bloc saying, oh, we need to leave the EU. It's too protectionist. And that's been essentially their basic argument since day one. So open trade also creates competition domestically, which, as we've said, basically means these companies might not be able to compete with these now lower imports, because how does a British company compete when another company can basically not only just undercut them on price, but undercut them by basically using low quality materials and doing manufacturing processes which are banned in the UK. How are they meant to compete against that? This is what they're talking about. This is basically destroys jobs. And this is something that they don't seem to be willing to be honest about, which I find kind of funny. So, which will ultimately improve the performance of British companies. Um, again, please cite a source on that. I'd be very interested to see that. So, this is the domestic economy, which is key to large scale growth. And around 70% of GDP is domestic, vastly more, for example, than just over 12% related to trade with the EU. I think that's a lot more, to be honest. I think he's lying about that number, but again, I'm sure someone will inform us in the comments at this moment. So, boosting innovation, productivity, and growth within the domestic economy creates huge potential for growth. Well, we could always do that when we're in the EU. There were numerous plans. Heck, David Cameron's own Northern Powerhouse idea, the EU said, that's a really good idea. You can have, if you go forward it, here's a ton of money to add to it. And of course, Cameron did not go ahead with the Northern Powerhouse because the Tories did not want to commit the money to go towards doing it. So hence, the Northern Powerhouse idea never happened. And I've said this before. If Cameron had actually done it, that would have been something which would have been shockingly good, because it would have meant a massive government investment in the North. But of course, the Conservatives didn't do it. And it was the exact same thing that Boris Johnson repeated with levelling up. The exact same thing that Gove is now trying to sort of go on about and trying to revive. But Rishi Sunak is not going to give him the money to do it. So, and it is vital that the government uses our newfound Brexit freedoms, like what, to facilitate this as they can help create trade opportunities. Again, what Brexit freedoms? What exactly do you want them to do? So there are a number of these post-Brexit possibilities which are open to be employed. So here we go. So there should be an energetic and determined approach to deregulation. Shock horror. I told you this is going to be, and they always talk about this. But let's see if they can be honest about what it is they want to get rid of. So this regulation weighs heavily, particularly on SMEs, who are not only the backbone of our economy, but almost most often the innovators and disruptors that generate progress. Okay, so what about the regulations at the moment currently not doing that? Because you say that If we get rid of this creates massive sort of economic innovation. But if we already have these regulations, aren't SMEs able to do things creatively at the moment to create economic regulation? After all, if you call them the backbone of our economy and they are the innovators and disruptors, then why do we need to deregulate? Seems to me they're doing fine at that already at the moment. So, removing the existing rules and restrictions. So, what are those rules and restrictions? Be honest, my friend, because once again, Brexiteers talk about, oh, we want to deregulate, but never actually talking about what they want to get rid of. So, including those relating to the arcane planning rules. Okay, so he wants to get rid of the planning rules, and those constrained within the EU law should go hand in hand with preparedness to diverge from future EU rules. So, straight away, he does not get what most SMEs actually want. If you look at what most SMEs want, they do not care that we've just signed this deal with the Pacific Partnership. They want deals with the EU because that's who they do most of their business with. SMEs do most of their business with the EU. Doesn't matter that you go and get trade deals with all these other countries all over the world because, as we said before, gravity matters in trade, distance matters. So they want to do business and have closer supply lines and links with Europe. So if you are serious about this and you wanted SMEs to do well, why then would you not be promoting doing deals with the EU, following them on future rules and regulations? And if that is the case, then why are we not then full members of the European Union having a seat at the table, being able to sort of guide those rules and regulations that would not only help SMEs in the UK, but SMEs all over Europe? Once again, the more you start to dissect these, what they're saying, the less arguments for Brexit they have within their own things. This is why you never see them outside of the realms of the Brexit sphere debate these things, because they would get destroyed instantly if they ever did. So, after all, the balance is currently 70% plus to the 18% of GDP and growing, which represents export to the rest of the world versus that 12%. Again, we export. He's lying about the European exports there. We export a heck of a lot. We export more than 50% of our trade is done with Europe. This idea that, oh yes, we've got 80% with the rest of the world. And this idea that, oh, it's growing. Well, not according to all the studies where you are seeing trade around the world take off, but the UK is not part of that. It has not taken off as we've seen the recovery from the pandemic. We did not take off. So this idea that it's 80% and growing with the rest of the world doesn't seem to match with what the actual figures and experts are saying. So he's very, very, I think he's using some very, very creative rules there to try and push his ideas forth. But yeah, no, we do a lot of trade. We do far more than that than he is saying. That is for certain. So that's his sort of first idea. But again, what? Oh, you're going to diverge rules? Are you going to get rid of these, quote, arcane planning rules? And you're going to make sure that we continue to diverge from future EU rules. Well, that basically damages our trade with Europe. We've already seen the consequences of that. We've lost a lot of GDP from that. You want to sort of do these planning rules? Well, we've seen conservatives balk at the idea of changing these planning rules. So, once again, you've got a problem with, again, your own party not wanting to fulfill your own crazy mantra. But also, I think this guy is lying about and I am very confident to say that he is lying about these rules, about the amount of trade that we do with Europe. So, another prerequisite to feed growth is access to appropriate finance. This has improved since I was the Director General of the British Chamber of Commerce over a decade ago. I then made it one of my missions to then improve access to finance, including long-term and patent capital. In particular, access to early-stage finance and the next stage, growth investment, which did not cause those entrepreneurs who wish to keep control and go for growth to have to lose control and then sell out. The big tech giants of the USA all avoided the loss of control, so have been a great benefit to the US economy. Now, yeah, fine. I don't have businesses looking for finance. That's good. If they want capital to be able to, again, grow or be able to develop a particular product, that's fine. But there are massive sort of things where we come to this. In fact, this is always one of these bizarre things because a lot of the free market fundamentalist things, you will have heard the term zombie companies, where they complain that because we've had such low interest rates, these zombie companies have been able to limp on by being able to have access to these low interest rate loans. And so it's kind of funny that he's sort of advocating that, but okay, we'll see. So the City of London, pardon me, the City of London is not always on board with this, and working to investment cycles leading to exit strategies, which are often a sale. And again, that very much happens sometimes. When you invest, sometimes those investments don't turn out. Shock horror. The result in lost opportunities and, of course, a frequently loss to the country of its technological lead. Well, the big problem would come then, of course, how do you stop sort of vulture capitalists who see these small SMEs swoop in, buy up the company, take the parts that they want back to their main company, and then just decimate the rest? We've known for a while that US vulture capitalists have been circling the UK, waiting for their opportunity to sweep in and start buying up like British companies left, right, and center. They are still circling, waiting for that opportunity because they are expecting the UK to go into some dire economic straits. Unfortunately, when you look at our economy at the moment, certainly is pointing that way. So, it is also essential that those who are prepared to put their livelihoods on the line and work 24/7, 365 days a year, creating a business, have the incentive of great rewards. The EIS schemes work well, but may not always apply to the most certainly to capital gains tax, and should not be raised lest it kill the goose. Again, low tax, gonna have low capital gains. Again, that will be a massive source of revenue that the government could then reinvest into sort of SMEs. SMEs, I think, would be perfectly happy to be able to pay a high rate of corporate tax if they knew in return the government was going to be reinvesting that money into the UK. But again, that's not how it happens. These guys are obsessed. Oh, you don't understand. If you lower this tax, then this money that they get goes somewhere. This is trickle down economics. That's what they're trying to suggest. You don't understand. If we do trickle down economics, all this money will just start flooding down. But that's not what has happened. We've been following this model for trickle down economics for at least over two or three decades. Hasn't really performed what these libertarian free market economists have proclaimed it should have done. So similarly, the recent announcement by the increase of corporation tax is also a big mistake, inhibiting the growth of British medium-sized businesses in particular. Again, why is it inhibiting the growth? They have to pay more tax. Doesn't mean that, again, they can't borrow money, or maybe if they're doing well, they can grow probably at a slower rate. Maybe they can grow their business by 10%, not this 50, 60% that these, this guy like this want to see. So finally, a major target of government policy in respect to domestic and trade economy ought to be the rebalancing of our undistributable balance of payment deficit. This is very important. That there is a trade support measures to help SMEs access overseas market and execute trade. Unfortunately, rather than this, there has been a seeming obsession in the government with foreign direct investment (FDI), which is very much a double-edged sword. Genuinely, inward investment is a good thing, particularly if it involves the placing of new businesses in the UK or infrastructure development, which cannot be taken away. Questionable on certainly not the infrastructure, but businesses. Yeah. Unlike the acquisition of knowledge and the innovation of a key existing UK companies, which can be extracted. Well, no, they can still be extracted because if these new businesses come to the UK, they are sort of UK companies. Why can they not be extracted? There has been way too much, quote, selling of the family silver as an alternative activity to all these hard yards of export support. Whether is the very nature of the FDI being concluded within the city, which have made good living standards and become experts at selling assets, and the authorities have been, quote, too comfortable about lax about what is being sold. In the event, FDI again, this is one of these things that I'm actually quite surprised he's against, because normally you'd see these free market fundamentalists saying, oh, look, if someone comes in and buys a successful company, that's a good thing. That should be encouraged. And of course, what that company may then do with those assets that it now acquires, even if it wants to just get rid of everyone in that company, just to potentially take out a potential, competitor, which we have seen that happened quite a lot in the US. So be it. So I'm quite surprised that he's actually against that, but hey, who knows? Maybe he's seen this before and actually has an experience of this. So I'm actually quite surprised him complaining about this, where you would normally see these guys sort of loving this. So in the event that FDI does provide a one-off benefit in income in the year of sale, but then very much the continuing stream of remittance to foreign owners, which adds to the balance of payments deficit. This becomes a drug as further FDI is sought to try and offset this outflow. This was never the case until recent decades, with the UK overseas investments previously always outstripping FDI. So FDI always gets two cheers only, and does not rank very high, as Britain's growth and prosperity does little in lifting the burden through deregulation and access to growth finance. Again, he's actually said, "Oh yeah, we should be, investing in abroad. Why should we invest in abroad? I would rather that money be spent here in the UK so that it can, grow the UK. We can have people who can have more jobs in the UK. We can regrow this massive industrial base and manufacturing sector that we have." Like I say, quoting David Cameron and Osborne, they were right in saying that, look, you have a massive worker base in the north of England that most of them are sitting and doing nothing, because there is not the jobs to be able to sort of sustain them as there once were. So maybe we should invest and make sure that we sort of bring more manufacturing into these areas. But of course, they never went and actually followed through on it, because, again, the Tory party does not want to invest in the UK. We said that before. They're far more invested in outward investment. That's why you've got, again, so there's an infamous quote of Jacob Rees-Mogg saying, "Oh no, you don't understand. We shouldn't be investing in the UK. We should be using all this UK foreign investment money to invest in, like, South America, because, reasons." Anyway, so hurrah then for trade deals. But there have been many ways in which the government can help improve innovation, productivity, and so forth to go for growth. Sadly, ministers seem to have neglected these and consigned them to the, quote, too difficult to try trade. Whitehall has a propensity to keep its trade ministers on planes rather than at their desks being a nuisance by looking at what is really going on in the UK, businesses and the export sector. As it happens, the scorer of the Trans-Pacific deal, Kimmy Badenoch, has written her portfolio with many of these levers for domestic growth and rebalancing. Let us hope she now uses them as she now turns her attention to these. Very much doubt it. I very much doubt it. We'll see. We will certainly see on the balance whether she actually does many of these things that he's certainly claiming about, because I guarantee you business is going to throw fits if she does. Like I say, Badenoch is really not that good at, I think, to be honest, at her job. I think she's very, very much out of her depth. Like I say, it was very, very telling where you had we had this announcement at 1 o'clock in the morning where you had Kimmy Badenoch, basically, who had been staying up all night, where you had all these other guys on the screen who it was morning for them because they were all in the Pacific and it was morning for them, so it was fine. We had Kimmy Badenoch staying up to like midnight or to 1 o'clock in the morning, basically so that she could do this big PR press release at 1 in the morning. So yeah, like I say, this is typical free market fundamentalist nonsense. We've seen this before. Again, if only we don't understand, if we tax these people less, all this money that they now have will trickle down. We've got to go for growth. Well, growth in business doesn't necessarily have to be, well, now we've grown 20% this year, so we need to grow 40% next year and then 60% next year, because you cannot. This idea of infinite growth is just unsustainable. What's wrong with a company going, well, tell you what, we grew 10% this year, but the year after, we don't grow, but we still make a profit in business? What's wrong with celebrating that? Again, these guys do not want to celebrate that type of business, because to them, that's just a zombie company. That company should have died off because it didn't grow. And by the way, I think it was Minford. I can't remember if it was or not. I think someone once said, when I was looking up this, they said that if a company does not have like sustained growth for like more than 3 years, it is a zombie company that should essentially be folded. It does not that company has made profit or has made money. No, if it hasn't grown as a company in a 3-year succession, it should fold. Again, there are many successful SMEs out there who have been at they've hired 20 people and that's been it, because they've been very content to be at that level. They don't want to grow anymore. Again, this is why I've always said this idea of this libertarian free market fundamentalism has never ever really been this massive popular idea. And yet, like I say, our next video we'll be going over Liz Truss's again, because she's still around trying to make a big pitch that apparently we are too low tax and this is benefiting people like Russia and China. So, as always, guys, like I say, look forward to that one tomorrow. But as always, until then, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all very soon.